Good morning, D1. Happy Wednesday. Let's go ahead. Let's talk about your jobs for today. So first things first, it is the week of the 18th through the 22nd. It is Wednesday. Happy January 20th and happy Inauguration Day. Today's the day where our new president is sworn in. So if you have the opportunity to watch that, make sure you do. It's a big deal, so make sure, if you can, make sure you watch it. All right, let's go ahead, though. Let's talk about what our jobs are for today. First things first, we are doing our morning work. We are talking about contractions this week. Remember, we are going to become pros with contractions. With contractions, we see punctuation, we see the apostrophe, super duper important. And so your morning work, your job for today, is seeing that in these pink boxes here, you have a set of words. So you have 2 words in these pink boxes, and so it's taking a second to load. And so in these little boxes that are about to pop up, thank you for being patient. You will see these 2 words, and then down here, these little boxes that are black, you're going to see are contractions. Awesome. And so we have 2 sets of words. For example, would not. Now I have to go through the contractions, and I have to find the contraction that combines those 2 words together and adds an apostrophe. And so I look through would not. I look for the word would, because that's most likely going to be in there, right? And then I remember with not, when I use it in contraction, the apostrophe takes place of the O. And so I look, oh, here's the word would, and I see NT and an apostrophe where the O used to be. Oh, I know that's it. And so I'm going to click and I would drag it into that box. And then I go through and I find the contractions and I match them up to the appropriate combination of words. And so that is going to be your morning work job. Then you have your journal, Words of Wisdom Wednesday. And so we have a quote from Abraham Lincoln, a former president, for today. And our quote is, "The best way to predict the future is to create it." And so I want you to think about, what does this quote mean to you in 5 to 6 sentences, and also explain, how does that apply to you? If you wanted to predict the future, what are you going to do? How are you going to create it? And so, keeping that in mind, you are going to respond to this quote. Sentence frames and starters are provided on the right, as always, and use those as needed. Again, it is not a requirement to use them, but they're there if you would like them. And then we have our Zoom at 9 o'clock. Please, please, please make sure you're coming on time. We are going to be talking about a little bit of expectations and stuff, and so it's really, really important that you come on time, because part of those expectations is coming on time. So keep that in mind. Then you're going to have an IB job. It is an Animal Adaptations Informational Writing Pre-Assessment. That's a mouthful. You might look at this and say pre-assessment and get a little nervous. This is not something I want you to worry about. This isn't something that is, going to later reflect on your report card. This is telling Miss Walsh, what do you already know about informational writing? If you don't know a lot, that's okay. But if you do know a lot, hey, that's great, and that tells Miss Walsh, oh, we don't need to cover that. And so keep that in mind. If I see that everyone's using transition words in their writing, well, then we don't need to spend time on transition words. If I see that in everybody's writing we have, lowercase i's, well, guess what? We are going to be practicing capitalizing our pronoun, I, and so on. So keep that in mind, please. And so, looking at our job for today, in order to do our writing assignment, we first need to have some reading. When we are doing an informational writing, we are informing the reader. So this means that you are going to be the expert. And in order to be the expert, you need to do a little research. And so this is going to be your research. And so you are going to go through and read or listen, because again, Miss Walsh provides you the audio. Go through and read the passages. There are 4 pages, and I might be a little biased, but as I said before, this is my favorite unit, and so I'm really excited about this one. There's a really lot of cool information we're going to be talking about, and so definitely make sure that you are reading or listening as you are going through, because again, this is going to have a lot of important information that's going to help you with your writing. Now, this is your time to inform Miss Walsh, and you get to be the teacher. You're the expert. And so you are going to write at least 1 paragraph. At least 1. Can you write more? Yes, of course. But at least 1, 5 to 6 sentences. You have a lot to work with here. Your prompt, this means this is what you are talking about. You need to answer these questions. If you do not answer these questions, that tells Miss Walsh that you don't know how to answer a prompt, and that is what we're going to have to focus on. So make sure you are paying attention. What am I asking you to tell me here? What are adaptations? They talk about that in a reading. Again, you have to make sure you paraphrase and use your own words. You can't use exactly what they tell you. You can't use exactly what another website tells you. You have to use your own words. So what are adaptations? How do they help animals survive? And then, to answer those questions, provide examples of adaptations in your writing. So if you're explaining what adaptations are and you're saying, oh, they help animals survive because da 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 da, for example, and you provide me an example, and you give me a specific example, and you say, oh, this adaptation that this animal has, it helps them do this, that helps them survive because of this. Boom! You're answering the questions. You're telling me what adaptations are you telling me, how they help animals survive, and you provided examples. That is like superstar response right there. So keep that in mind. Make sure if you need to, Miss Walsh has a section right here for you to type notes, especially if you're listening to the audio and you're like, ooh, that's a good point. You can type your notes here. Okay, so keep that in mind. Then we will have a break. You're going to deserve it, especially after doing all that writing. When you come back from that break, it will be spelling contractions. So you click on the little 100 symbol. It will take you to your spelling job. Again, we are going to be pros with contractions. Contractions, we have an apostrophe. And so that is what we're going to be really focusing on this week. It's super duper important. We use contractions all the time. They're really casual, and they just allow us to be really purposeful with our words when we are speaking or when we're writing. And so your job is to drag the circle to the correct word that completes each sentence. Some of these you might be looking like, oh, I don't remember really going over these. Well, guess what? We're going to be going over the other contractions that we haven't practiced yet in today's Zoom. So keep that in mind. And so you're going to go through, you're going to click the circle, and you are going to drag it over to the correct spelling of the word. Keep in mind, the apostrophe might be in a different spot than usual. They might accidentally drop a letter that they're not supposed to. They might add an extra letter that they're not supposed to. So keep that in mind. I had a couple of friends who were saying that they were running out of circles last week, and Miss Walsh makes sure that she puts enough circles, and so what might be happening is we're grabbing too many circles at one time. And I know it's not always purposeful, on purpose rather, and that's okay. So I'm going to show you real quick how to solve that problem. So if you click on here, right, if you click on the circle and you want to copy, you go to Edit, Copy. It just copied that circle. And then if I go to Edit again and I press Paste, I just made a new circle for me. And so just keep that in mind. If you're like, I just ran out of circle, use that tool because it's given to you. And then I also know some friends who use the Control-C, Control-V method. That is also another way to do that. But this is just a quick, easy way. Going to the Edit tool, make sure it's selected, meaning it's highlighted, all blue like this, and then you can copy and paste it. After your spelling job, you have Stuart Little, my favorite little mouse. We are going to be reading chapter 3 today. And so in these beginning chapters, we're really just looking at the beginning of Stuart's life. We're really looking at kind of background information. We're really kind of getting to know what does day-to-day life look like for Stuart. And then we'll start getting more into his adventure a little bit more. But this is still just a lot of background information because it tells us a lot about his character. It tells us a lot about the other characters as well, Mr. and Mrs. Little and George. So keep that in mind. And so after you have listened to the story, go ahead and move on to slide number 2, and here are your questions. And now, really quickly, I do want to address some things that I noticed specifically with chapter 2 questions. For example, when it was asking about how does Mr. Little feel about mouse holes, I had some friends who just said he doesn't like them. And so, if you know you're one of my friends who wrote he doesn't like them, I think it's fair to say that that's not personal best effort, because that's not exactly the entire truth. And that tells me that you weren't really paying attention and, again, not putting in personal best effort. Mr. Stewart, if you're going to say he doesn't like the mouse holes, you should tell me why. And that's because he's worried that Stuart Little might become curious and explore the mouse holes and never return, because Stuart, first and foremost, is a mouse, and he might become curious and he wants to explore what his life would be like as a mouse. The author directly says that. And so that's where I feel a little frustration when I see friends just say he doesn't like them. Who doesn't like them? What does he not like? Why? And so make sure you're really being thoughtful with your answers. That's showing in your grade. If you're not, Mr. Gibbons and I, we went through and we were pretty picky about our answers just because, the author shares exactly why Mr. Little, or shared exactly how Mr. Little felt about the mouse holes. And so keep that in mind as you're going through here and answering these questions. If you're struggling with one of these questions, come to office hours. That is what Miss Walsh is there for, 11:30 to 12:30, and we'll look at them together. I really quickly, number 5, it says looking at the excerpt from question number 4, that means the quote. So the dialogue, what's in the quotation marks, not necessarily dialogue, but what's in the quotation marks, that is going to be the excerpt. And so you are responding to number 5 based off of what's in the quotes for number 4. So keep that in mind. Then you will have lunch. After your lunch, we're going to go ahead, we are going to be practicing perimeter. Click on the math symbols. And we are going to be looking at missing side. We are going to be working on this today in Zoom as well. And so keep that in mind. If you're looking at this and you're like, I'm not entirely sure what we're doing, don't worry, we're going to be working on this during Zoom. So keep that in mind. And it's going to kind of alternate because I noticed some friends who, again, as I mentioned yesterday, were not watching the morning message or really paying attention during the Zoom when I talked about it. So we have a combination of questions that are similar to our quick check yesterday, as well as new questions. And so here we see we are given the side 6 inches for the width. And so we know this is going to be 6 inches. Well, they give us the total perimeter. So that means we need to find out what this is. And so that is what we're going to be focusing on today, and we're going to be practicing that together. Then you're going to see with slide number 2, you're going to be finding the total perimeter. And so it gives you the length and width. And a common mistake that I noticed yesterday, and again we'll address it today, is friends were just adding these two numbers. And, you know, using my life skill of common sense, if this is right here is 10 inches, then what is this? And if this is 9 inches, what is this? So keep that in mind and make sure you are doing the perimeter of the entire shape. That is what perimeter is. It is the outside of the entire shape. If you're just doing these two numbers, adding 10 and 9, that is telling me that you weren't A, following the directions, and B, that tells me that we really need to keep focusing on perimeter, because perimeter tells me the outside of the whole shape, not just part of the shape. So keep that in mind. And then 3, we go back to trying to find the missing side. And then finally, with number 4, we're trying to find the total perimeter. So keep that in mind. After you have completed your perimeter assignment, then move on to iReady. Again, if you have not finished your diagnostic, I had a couple friends yesterday who told me, like, hey, Miss Walsh, I'm about halfway through. You give me a little check-in. That's totally fine. I really appreciate those of you who are communicating to me, letting me know, like, hey, Miss Walsh, it's taking me a little bit longer. That's okay. And I appreciate you communicating that with me. If you have not started, that is not okay. You need to make time for it. You're given at least 30 minutes in our schedule to work on it, and so you need to make the time for it. So keep that in mind. If you have finished your diagnostic, you're focusing on math today. So just keep that in mind. And then that's going to be it for our day today. If you have any questions, please let me know. Otherwise, I'll see you at our Zoom. All right, bye, G1.